Putting together any top 50 list when it comes to rappers or hip-hop, it's a disaster waiting to happen. It's even more of a touchy subject when you're talking about hip-hop's birthplace, New York City. But hey, it's great content for creators like me. Complex, which is actually a legitimate hip-hop publication, did a list in the summer of 2023. I'm a bit late to this list. It was for the 50th anniversary of hip-hop. I was not a YouTuber at that time, but this is right in my wheelhouse. I'm here to break it down. I'm here to make sense of it all. I'm Ryan. I talk music. Let's get it. Alright, so this is going to be the first of two videos. This video is handling part 1 of the list, numbers 50 through 26. My next video, part 2, will be numbers 25 through 1. If you're a subscriber to this channel, you're probably a little bit familiar with my background. I'm an East Coast guy. My hometown is Philadelphia, but I live in New York City right now. I was raised on East Coast hip-hop. Hip-hop is my favorite music genre. East Coast hip-hop is my favorite subgenre. So this is kind of my specialty. This is my thing, and reacting to this list is going to be fun. One final note before I get started. I only gave this list a close critical look right before recording this video. So as I went through, as I wrote the script, this was kind of the first time I was seeing this. So while this isn't quite a classic reaction video, these are not live reactions, it's pretty close to it. All right, let's do it. Let's dive in. Let's see what Complex has to offer. Getting things started at number 50, we have an immediately terrible pick with Ice Spice. Look, I understand her influence on the newer generation of New York hip hop. It does need to be acknowledged, but you have just so many spitters that have come from New York over the years, and we're putting Ice Spice in the top 50? She's mostly a pop artist. I do give her credit for helping develop the modern drill scene a little bit, but she's an artist with a very limited amount of raw talent, and that's putting it nicely. She was definitely included here due to her influence, nothing more. She doesn't even crack my top 200 New York rappers personally, not even close, in fact. Right below Ice Spice at number 50 is one of the most talented spitters of the 90s, and that's Pharaoh Munch. He broke out as a member of Organized Confusion in the early 90s, had a great run with his bandmate Prince Poe, and then he had a great solo run towards the end of the 90s and has actually had a very good, robust solo career along the way since his debut in 1999. He's one of the most technical rappers in New York history, and I think number 49 is an insult. For me, he's top 15, top 20 ever to come out of New York. I'm glad he got acknowledged on this list, but overall, just garbage placement by Complex. I think we're going to see a lot of this. There's going to be a lot of rappers that are included here, not for their skills, not for their writing, not for their technicality as a rapper, but instead due to their record sales and influence on the culture. And what that does is that makes guys like Pharaoh Munch, who should at least be in the top 30, top 25, slides them all the way down to number 49 in this case. I think influence, it definitely needs to be taken into account, but it should not be a primary factor. But record sales, no, throw those out the window. We're talking best rappers. That's literally the name of this list, is best rappers. So to me, that means the most skilled rappers, the most talented writers. And Pharaoh Munch at 49, oversight. I just said let's throw out record sales. Let's put a little bit less importance on influence. We have Diddy at number 48. Let's all go grab our baby oil and celebrate another garbage pick. 3 for 3, Complex, great start. Diddy's a trash person. He's a trash rapper, end of story. He's never been a good rapper. He's never been a good artist. He had an ear for what sounded good, but what he did was he brought one of the most prolific periods of New York hip-hop to its knees by popularizing and commercializing one of the most talented rappers to ever come out of New York. That's the notorious b.i.g. He basically tried to turn Biggie into a pop star, and had Biggie not met an untimely death, who knows what would have happened in the future. And look, he's probably on this list because he wasn't in the trouble that he's in or just kind of got out of here recently. His little stupid escapades and human trafficking, that wasn't really well known in 2023 when this list was done. Like, Complex, come on, man. This is like, people are gonna react to your list. Do a Rolling Stone, update your list, get people off of your lists. Biz Markie, number 47. That's the first pick I'm not steaming mad at. For me, the Biz is probably top 25 all time from New York, and he's one of those guys that wasn't the most technical rapper, but he had a ton of influence. He had a great voice. He was a beatboxer. He was one of the most fun and lovable characters in hip-hop. He was humorous. He had a great personality, one of the most recognizable voices in hip-hop history, New York or otherwise. He belongs on this list. 47, could have been higher, but either way, glad to see him here. Rest in peace, Biz Markie. Styles P at 46. 26, I can mostly get behind that pick, as long as we see Jadakiss later on the list. A member of the Lox who has also had a great solo career. Styles has an excellent, iconic voice, lots of charisma. He's made many great guest appearances over the years. The Ghost is nice on the mic, but he's also not the most talented lyricist of all time. He commands the listener's attention though, and his overall presence is pretty impressive. I'd also probably put him somewhere in the 40s. I think this is actually a pretty solid placement. Jim Jones at number 45. Here's another one that probably wouldn't have made the list had it been done here in 2025 due to his recent out-of-pocket comments against Nas. I always thought he was the least talented Dipset rapper, and while he's got a pretty decent presence on the mic, I don't think he'd even go in the top 100 out of New York. He's kind of the Crunchy Black of Dipset in my eyes. Grand Puba at number 44, that's a pick that I mostly agree with. I put him right there in the 40s as well. I think when it comes to brand Nubian members, I think Sadat X is more talented, a little more interesting. Anyway, Puba has a recognizable voice. He's got great breath control and diction. He can either be lighthearted or fun. He's known for his sex raps, but he could also bust your head open with some crazy battle raps. He's got some decent solo stuff and some great guest appearances too. I like Grand Puba at number 44. Melle at 43, I highly respect that pick. He was an absolute pioneer. He was one of the most important and omnipresent early New York rappers. He was a member of Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. He was a native of the Bronx. He was there when hip-hop was born. He was one of the biggest names in the first half of the 80s in hip-hop, New York or otherwise. He found a way to stay relevant for years to come after that initial fame and success. Hip-hop has evolved many times over since his heyday, so I don't think we can consider him one of the technically best rappers. Though this is what I mean about influence. It does definitely play a part in determining where these rappers land on this list. Good pick at number 43. I might put him inside my top 40. I know a lot of older heads might put him in their top 10. So if you're like 65 years old and you were there for the birth of hip-hop, please don't get mad at me. Just go listen to Rakim. Sean Price at number 42. The brokest rapper you know. One half of Bootcamp Clique's Helta Skelta. Sean Price was extremely technical. He was just a deeply talented writer who had a great sense of humor. He had a fantastic solo career in the 2000s and 2010s before he met his untimely death in 2015. He was one of the underground's most recognizable names. I'm glad to say that I've seen him live in concert many years ago with Jedi Mind Tricks down in Philadelphia. I remember he was one of the first artists that passed away. There have been a lot of artists in the past 10 years from hip-hop that have lost their lives, that have died too early, and Sean Price was kind of that first one that really affected me. But I think 42, it's too low for me. Top 25 is where he belongs. P is an underground legend whose legacy has really, unfortunately, taken off after his death. I guess it's not all bad, but I just wish he would have got more of his flowers while he was still here. That's a reminder. Appreciate these rappers while we still have them, because some of these guys are getting really old. A$AP Rocky at 41, that's a pick that I mostly agree with. His influence during a mini comeback in New York hip-hop in the early 2010s, it was second to none. He was kind of the leader of that, along with the Pro Era Collective. Of course, A$AP Rocky is the leader of the ASAP mob. I do think that sometimes he dumbs it down on the mic. I think he's got a lot more potential than his rhymes lead on. This is more of an influence pick, less of a technical pick, but you know, he's a businessman. He's really done a lot for hip-hop. He's a prolific solo artist, has some very good albums, some great legendary mixtapes. 41, I think that makes sense. Kool Moe Dee at number 40, that's another pick that I mostly agree with. The Harlem rapper was at the forefront of hip-hop's golden age as it began in the second half of the 80s. His music is solid, but he's probably best known for a high-profile feud with LL Cool J, which I think LL got the best of him. He brought a new energy and attitude to rapping as hip-hop went through its first real recycle in the early to mid-80s. But I think he also got overshadowed by a lot of golden age stalwarts like Rakim, Chuck D, Big Daddy Kane. And I think beef-wise, unfortunately, LL kind of wiped him, stunted his growth as an artist. But Kool Moe Dee definitely deserves a spot on this list. N.O.R.E, Noriega, N.O.R.E, whatever you want to call him, at number 39. This is an interesting pick. On one hand, I love this guy and what he did as part of Capone and Noriega's The War Report, one of my favorite hip-hop albums of all time. He was one half of the duo. He had some weird kind of abstract, unorthodox rhymes and different schemes and styles. But then he got popular. He really dumbed it down on his solo albums. I mean, it got to a point where it was absolutely laughable. As fun as those early 2000s N.O.R.E albums were, I think the God's Favorite was the one that I had. But man, he sounded like a fifth grader trying to rap, man. He could barely string words together at that time. Now, he contributes an interesting thing to the culture here in the present day. He's the leader of the Drink Champs podcast, which interviews a lot of different rappers, brings a lot of different personalities on. So I do think that, you know, we have to play the influence card here once again, and that's what gets N.O.R.E into the top 40 on this list. If we're talking about him as a rapper alone, though, top 60, top 70, maybe top 75 in my book. MC Lyte at number 38, that's too low. That should be higher. In a genre that's always been dominated by men and toxic masculinity, MC Lyte showed that gender didn't mean a damn thing. Technically, I think she's one of the more skilled rappers to ever pick up a mic. I put her in my top 30, maybe even top 25 when it comes to technique and the pure, raw art of being a rapper. She laid the groundwork for many female rappers of future generations to emerge, the Lil' Kims, the Foxy Browns, the Nicki Minaj's eventually. She truly is one of the early queens of hip-hop. Give MC Lyte her flowers, she's fantastic. Ja Rule at 37, are we kidding right now? Known today as much for his Fire Festival madness as his watered-down music quality, Ja Rule came out in the 90s. He actually had a lot of energy, charisma, and he had a pretty iconic gruff voice, I'll say that. But he fell into the commercial machine that Murder Inc. Records was in the early 2000s, and his output just... The quality of some of those albums after his debut, they're just some of the worst hip-hop albums ever. The man knew how to make hits. His voice was pretty iconic for millennials like me who were in middle school at the time, but his music isn't good. He's not really a good rapper outside of his first album. He does have that unique gruff voice. That is something to pay attention to, but that doesn't save him from getting a placement way too high on this list. For me, maybe top 200 out of New York, top 250. Number 37 is just egregious. So check this out. We have Ja Rule at 37, and right ahead of him, just one spot ahead of Ja Rule, we have Kool Keith. You're gonna put one of the most out there and wonderfully strange MCs just a slot ahead of Ja Rule? Look, these lists, they're always ripe for controversy. This is not overly surprising. I knew we were gonna run into this. I actually did a video a few months back where Complex ranked the best and worst years in hip-hop history, and that list was full of controversy as well. Go check that video out. I'll link the list up in the corner. When it comes to Kool Keith, the truth is, whether it's his breakout with Ultramagnetic MCs in the 80s or his crazy solo career, so many albums, especially some really high profile, very good ones in the late 90s, Kool Keith is a legend. He's a little bit weird for some, but he's a legend. There's no one remotely similar to him on the mic. He's in my top 15 New York rappers of all time. There was a time he was in my top 10. 36 is actually a little disrespectful, especially if you're going to put Mr. Fast and the Furious at 37. But it's still good to see Kool Keith on here. This is one of those rappers that I was afraid was going to get snubbed. Old Dirty Bastard at number 35, not a technical rapper by any means. This pick is almost entirely driven by his once-in-a-generation charisma and his craziness, his voice. In a collective like Wu-Tang with so many different voices and styles, ODB somehow managed to be the most unique and stand out the most among that entire 9-man crew. And some of the MCs out of Wu-Tang, some of the most talented rappers of all time. So for ODB to stand out among some of these wordsmiths, that really is a testament to his charisma, his style, and how unique he was. He was the X factor that made Wu-Tang as great as they were, and once he passed away in 2004, nothing ever felt the same as far as Wu-Tang group albums. It always felt like something was missing. I'd agree with this pick. 35 sounds good to me for ODB. Foxy Brown at number 34, that's a decent pick. Personally, probably top 40, top 45, but 34 is fine. She came out in the mid-90s as like a 16-year-old and wrapped circles around most rappers in the game, male, female, or otherwise. As part of this supergroup The Firm with AZ and Nas, she matched up with these male counterparts pound for pound when she was barely old enough to drive a car. That's right, I said it, she could hang with mid-90s Nas in her peak. She was so poignant, she just had this in-your-face delivery that I've always loved and appreciated. She softened up big time around the turn of the century and she went pop, and she's had pretty much an unremarkable career ever since. She's had some shady legal issues too, but her contributions to New York hip-hop in the mid to late 90s were pretty important. At number 33, we have GZA from the Wu-Tang Clan. I think GZA is the most talented rapper out of Wu-Tang Clan, and while I'm glad to see him on this list, 33, that's too low. He needs to be higher. He's a top 15 New York rapper of all time, maybe even top 10. His work off of Liquid Swords alone earns him that placement. The double entendres, the wordplay, the ability to use metaphors and other literary techniques to tell his stories, to weave together a lyrical concept. His knowledge about chess, his status as a chess grandmaster. He's one of the most intelligent rappers of all time. I just don't think anybody in Wu-Tang outshines GZA. You have some great personalities in there, like I just said. Guys like Ghostface Killah command your attention. Method Man's very technically savvy. Raekwon comes correct with the slang. But as far as being technically the best rapper, it's GZA. He is kind of a rapper for nerds, so there's that. That may have alienated him in this placement. But he was hard as hell in his prime. And if you look up the term wordsmith in the dictionary, you're gonna find Jizz's picture there. So yeah, then there's no way you can put Fabolous, who comes in at number 32, ahead of a guy like Jizza. That's just foolish. I mean, look, Fab is a very talented rapper. He was very impressive when he came out in the late 90s. I remember him on those DJ Clue mixtapes. I think it was the Professional Part 1. Fabolous was on a few tracks and I was like, who the is this guy? He is fire. That was before he came out with Ghetto Fabolous and all that turn of the century stuff. His influence is pretty far reaching. Like I said, he's a very technical rapper, but there's no way you can put him ahead of a guy like Jizza or Kool Keith. Just another example of how Complex is putting emphasis on popularity and influence and record sales probably, and they're putting that over pure lyrical skill from a rapper. This is the best rappers list, not the most records sold list. Fab would absolutely be in the top 20 if we're talking most records sold by a New York MC. But we're talking about the art of rapping, the skill, the writing, the delivery, the diction. Fabolous over Jizza is just stupid. I gotta let it go, man. We're focused on Fabolous right now, but relatively speaking, this irks me big time. I would put Fab in the top 50. He is one of the more skilled rappers to come out of New York. He is extremely consistent. Even though he's been mainstream facing for pretty much his entire career, he's still one of the best mainstream facing rappers when it comes to technicality, when it comes to skill. He had a ton of flair. He was extremely technical in his early days. Top 50 makes sense for me. 32, that's too high. Fat Joe number 31 is kind of another example of this. This is a little bit less egregious of an example, as I think Fat Joe was a very important part of hip-hop's renaissance in the early to mid-90s. He was part of the DITC crew. He had some really hard, rugged records for I think his first 2 or 3 albums before he blew up and went pop in the 2000s. He belongs on this list. Top 40, top 50 maybe. I'd probably put Joe in over Fab, but move Joe and Fab back 15 spots and move Jizza up 15 spots, and now we're talking. Kool G Rap at number 30. Ugh. I thought that Complex was actually going to snub G Rap. I'm happy to see him on this list in one sense, but number 30? Get out of here. G Rap is in my top 3 New York rappers of all time. Top 5 overall. 30, it's frankly disrespectful considering his lyrical skill, considering what he did with the Juice Crew in the late 80s, the work with DJ Polo in the late 80s, early 90s, and then his solo album 456 and the technical ability he showed there. That album is a perfect album. He was just an incredible storyteller. He really had charisma. He was very technical. He has an iconic voice. And like I said, 456, I think is one of the most underrated and best lyrical performances of all time. New York, any other city, any genre, any language. His career kind of really slowed down after 456, which was from 1995. He's had a few really solid solo albums, but really not that much notable, just a few underground albums here and there. He's definitely had some good guest appearances. He's found a way to stay relevant. He is a legend, and he knows it, and you should know it too. He's one of the most talented writers and spitters of all time, and I don't care if he hasn't done anything earth-shattering in 30 years. Just that run he was on from about 86 when he came out until 456 in 1995, there's not enough I could say about how much I love Kool G Rap, so there's a personal bias here. But 30, that's criminal. Big L at number 29, that's also disrespectful. That's also borderline criminal. I don't think it's quite as egregious as G Rap at 30. Big L's easily in my top 10 New York rappers of all time. He's the punchline king. Yes, his catalog and his influence was limited due to his untimely death in 1999, but he's one of the most talented lyricists to ever hold a mic, and his voice, his delivery, his wit, his writing style. He had this witty, quirky personality as a rapper while staying hard as hell and dropping some of the darkest bars of all time. But then he would turn around and make a song like MVP, which was accessible and danceable and had radio airplay. How can you barely place Big L in the top 30? I mean, Complex is known for knowing hip-hop. And you're gonna put Big L at number 29, man? I don't think so. Complex continues to take L's here. Throw your L's up. Is that the right way? Mace at number 28. Mace. Marble-mouthed Mace over Big L, Kool G Rap, Jizza, Kool Keith. You have Mace. He rhymes like he's storing chestnuts in his cheeks for the upcoming winter. He had nothing interesting to say as a member of Bad Boy Records on the mic. Absolutely nothing. He was part of the despicable shiny suit era with that asshole Diddy and what he did to hip-hop. Mace was sort of his pawn. His proximity to Puffy, it's absolutely sickening. His music has aged terribly. It was fun at the time, I'll give it that. I think that first album, Harlem World, came out in 97. It had a fresh sound. But looking back as to what that did to hip-hop as a whole, man, I just get angry. I'll say this, he did have some interesting work alongside actually Big L in the earlier 90s as part of the Children of the Corn collective. They were like this early underground lo-fi horrorcore group. Cameron Rayquan was in that group too, but I mean, as far as actual music that people generally know when it comes to Mace, it's mostly garbage. There's some nostalgia factor there, yes, I will admit that, but Mace, I don't know, he's trash. 28. You're putting him at 28 once again. Complex puts a rapper on there due to record sales and too much emphasis on influence. Absolute trash. Pop Smoke at 27, that's a bit more intriguing. I don't know if I agree with that placement, but we do have to acknowledge the influence of Pop Smoke, as much as you may not like to do so. You older heads, you know who you are. He came out, he popularized the modern sound of New York drill in the late 2010s, and then he passed away in early 2020, way too young. He was trailblazing from a stylistic standpoint. He had a very iconic voice. He didn't really have that much to say lyrically, but he was talented, he was unique, and my god, that voice, I keep coming back to that, but that was perfect for commanding the listener. I just remember being here in New York. I used to live in Queens in the pandemic summer of 2020. Everybody was walking around with cloths over their face. You couldn't see anybody's face. There were fireworks being set off every night for some reason, and when cars rolled by, you would hear that Pop Smoke playing. You could hear that voice. You could hear those low guttural drill beats. I don't want to give Pop Smoke too much undue posthumous appeal. I don't want his music to be super elevated, because it was good, but it wasn't great. It was pretty iconic, and you had to be here in New York in 2020 to really understand his influence. You had the song N.O.R.E. that was also part of the George Floyd protests back during that very same summer. That was like one of the flagship songs, if you will, of the protests, which I was out in the streets constantly that summer. So let's forget about the posthumous appeal for a second. I'd probably slide him in top 40, top 45, definitely not too high. So Complex, again, takes the popularity versus skill route here again a little bit. It's not as egregious. It's not as rage-inducing as Mace, but I do think they're on to something, having Pop Smoke here in the middle of the list. Last pick for this video, number 26. This is an interesting pick. It's Raekwon from Wu-Tang Clan. I don't agree with having Raekwon ahead of GZA. I'll say that off the bat. I don't think Raekwon was the most technically skilled rapper. I think he was somewhere in the middle when it came to skill and talent as a rapper within the Wu-Tang Clan. I'd say guys like Method Man, GZA, Inspector Deck were all ahead of him, Ghostface, but he was more of a trailblazer in that cinematic mafioso lyrical style, which became a huge part of New York City hip-hop in the second half of the 90s. I did a video on that and how that contributed to New York City's Renaissance ending. I'll link that up in the corner. Another thing he was known for was his use of slang. Some of these really cryptic, abstract terms that he and Ghost would use, especially on Only Built for Cuban Links, his 1995 debut, was pretty iconic. He was one of the earliest names to utilize the now way oversaturated drug coke rap market. The entire Griselda collective should thank Raekwon. They should write a letter to Raekwon thanking him for that style and that influence. But if we're being fully truthful here, Raekwon was kind of an average rapper. I know I'm gonna get some hate for this, but go back and listen to him, listen to the way he rhymed, and then put on a GZA verse, put on an Inspected Deck verse, and then tell me who's average or not average. If we're taking influence into account once again, along with skill, yes, absolutely top 25 or just outside of it. So yeah, I do think you have to marry those things, the technical skill, the influence, and if we're doing that, yeah, I think 26, that's a pretty good spot. That's it for the first half of this list. What do you think so far? Am I warranted in all these negative responses, or am I crazy? Am I onto something? Am I being too curmudgeon-y? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. While you're at it, I love it if you like this video and subscribe to the channel. I keep growing, bigger and bigger things are coming. Couldn't do it without you guys. Would love if you join my community. Part 2 is going to be fun. You know it's going to be ripe with controversy if we had a shit ton of that here in the first half. Who's going to be the best New York rapper of all time? My money is on two guys. It's either going to be Biggie or Jay-Z. And keep in mind, I have not seen the top of this list yet. I only look at these when I write the script for the video, so I kind of have a raw reaction. Join me next time for my breakdown of numbers 25 through number 1. And I love doing these videos, all the no-skip albums, the 70s, the best of the 2010s, whatever it is. But this is my wheelhouse. 90s hip-hop is my thing. Of course, I love hip-hop from the 80s, the 2000s. And ranking these rappers from New York, the city I live in, the city that defined my hip-hop listening taste, man, this is a trip for me. So I love this. I love you guys for tuning in, and I will see you in part 2. Thanks again for watching.